Well, I sense inside of American political economy, there's almost a page from the playbook of Bismarck. If you can't solve your problems inside, look outward and pick an enemy to unify your people. And the problems, which you cite very eloquently in the book, of more than half the population having a declining standard of living since 1989 is really quite daunting and quite distressing.
Yes, you see, what I try to point out in the book is that there are lots of misconceptions that Americans have about their own strengths and about China's weaknesses, you know. So, for example, it is taken as a given, right? It's like ideological certainty that when a thriving democracy takes on a geopolitical struggle against a communist party system, the thriving democracy will always win, as it demonstrated in the First World War against the Soviet Union. But then if you dig deeper and you try to understand what is the core situation of American society today and the core situation of Chinese society, you discover that the United States is actually having to deal with some major structural challenges. And one of the key structural challenges is that the average income of the bottom 50%, yes, 50% of the American population has been sliding down over a 30-year period. And as I try to analyze in the book, this is not just an accident. This is a result of deep structural forces in American society that have moved America away from being a thriving democracy towards becoming a plutocracy. And by contrast, China, in the 30-year period where the average income of the bottom 50% in America has been sliding down, in the same 30-year period, the bottom 50% in China have had their best 30 years in 3,000 years. So at a time when the Chinese people are experiencing the most amazing improvements in their standard of living, and you must remember also, for most of Chinese history, the bottom 50% struggled to survive. They would die in famines and civil wars, and they had a very rough life. In the last 30 years, they have access to education, housing, healthcare, travel in a way they never ever had before in their lives. So after China has gone through the best 30-year period ever under the Chinese Communist Party, the United States is telling the Chinese people, why don't you get rid of the Chinese Communist Party? And the Chinese people are scratching their head and say, excuse me, you know, I've had the best 30 years. And the Chinese Communist Party is succeeding because while in theory it is still a communist party, it is a communist party that is the exact opposite of the Soviet Communist Party, because the Soviet Communist Party was run by old apparatchiks. The Chinese Communist Party may possibly be the most meritocratic political party in the world. And the selection process results in the best minds running China today. You met some of them. You know yes. Wang Qishan. You know how brilliant these people are. Right? So by going into this old ideological reflex and saying, hey, democracies can always overcome communist parties, the United States hasn't done a deeper analysis and realized that this is not a contest within a democracy and a communist party system. It's a contest within a plutocracy and a meritocracy.